I suppose, could talk actually about the shoes, I think, for the entire sort of event, but we're not going to, because there's other things to get through, and people can read much more about that and the makes that you advocate in the book. But perhaps to talk about another key thing, which is food, and what you both would advocate as not so much a runner's diet, but just a general diet. And as you quite rightly say in the book, that's not really the word you want to use, but just what sorts of foods people would be best off eating to ensure a kind of fitness and an overall running health that they would like. Because again, it's another myth that has been debunked, I think, in quite a kind of gradual way over the years. But the idea that we should fuel ourselves with kind of pasta and carbs is not the right way. So perhaps, from both of you, let's start with you, Chris.
I'm actually just watching Eric as he talks. I feel like Eric is my sanity translator. Like I'm over here, like filling bottles with gasoline and stuffing rags in them and throwing Molotov cocktails. And Eric's like, let's just have a voice of reason here. So you can see why we're a really good team. Yeah. I'm here fulminating and exploding, and he's actually translating it into a sane, coherent argument. But here, yeah, you bring up a really good point. And I think it's the reason why we made it our first chapter, and I believe our most important chapter in Born to Run 2, which is another notion that has sort of crept into conventional thinking and has not really been rooted back out again. The overwhelming majority of us come to running because of our relationship with food in one way or another. Typically, when we start to run in mid-life, we're doing it because we've put on a few pounds, we're getting out of shape, or conversely, we want to be able to eat whatever we want without the consequences. But yet what happens is our body adapts very, very quickly to whatever kind of stress we put on it. So if initially you shed a few pounds by running, your body's going to figure that out. Your body is constantly scheming ways to add fat to your body, because from an evolutionary perspective, having a lot of adipose fat around your belly is a great survival mechanism. So your Stone Age body, which you still live in, is looking for ways to add fat to your body. You may trick your body momentarily by outrunning those calories, but your body will figure that out and then scheme ways to put the fat back on. So you can never really outrun a bad diet. And that, I believe, is one reason why people find running to be so kind of miserable and unhappy and frustrating, because they're trying to lose a little bit of weight and it's not happening, and they run more and it's not happening, and they get injured and they feel sore. So what we advocate to people is figure out a way, and there are very simple ways, to get a healthier relationship with what you eat. Become more aware of the consequences of your food on your body. Make that your starting point. Get food off the table, and then you can really begin to enjoy your running.
Eric, perhaps you could pick up on that, because you talk about the importance of food. It's also, it's not just for your running. I mean, your food affects your injury risk hugely. And you have some great stuff in the book about just very specifically what kind of diet that is the best diet, because of what you burn when you're running. Again, a misconception of what you're burning when you're running is that you're burning, you need carbs to fulfill, to replace that, which isn't the case. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that just through this word you use, feel. I think actually, when you're running, you don't necessarily crave those things you were told you crave. You actually really crave the stuff that you write about with your recipes in the book. You crave nuts, you crave those proteins. So that sort of helped, hasn't it, to bring people away from this notion that as soon as you finish or before you start, you should wolf down a bowl of pasta or a bowl of porridge.
Well, you just nailed it. You used that word feel. And that's really kind of the overriding tone of this whole book is a lot of what we're putting out there in all of the chapters is creating a sense of feel. So from a food perspective is that, hey, we want to create awareness of when you put something in your body, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel good? Does it make you feel bad? Or is it indifferent? And that's why we take people through a 2-week test where we're stripping away a lot of high glycemic foods so people can start to actually have awareness of what they're eating and how it makes them feel, that can then maybe spiral in a good way to them, helping them to really create something that they can sustain throughout their life, because of how they're feeling and how they know it's going to make them feel.
So tell us, Chris, some of the sort of, I mean, it's quite simple to explain, actually. Tell us the diet that you advocate. You bring some brilliant recipes into the book, but I think you can probably explain quite simply to people the main sorts of foods that go alongside running and contribute best to help your body physically and mentally if you want to be able to keep up running.
You know, the big light bulb for me was when I was talking to Dr. Tim Noakes. He's a South African sports performance specialist. He's the godfather of carbohydrate loading. He was the guy that debuted this idea back in the 70s that carbohydrate loading was the way to get maximum performance from athletes. And then 20 years later, Tim Noakes is diagnosed as diabetic. And he's like, well, what the hell happened? You know, I'm running ultra marathons, I'm training, I'm a specialist in this field, and now I'm not diabetic. And he went back and revisited his research and realized there's a major flaw in his reasoning for carbohydrate loading. So the godfather of carbohydrate loading has done a 180-degree turn and said, don't eat them. And he proposes something that we advocate in Born to Run too, which is a 2-week test. And the 2-week test simply sort of revisits your factory presets. It strips out all the high glycemic foods, any foods they'll spike your blood sugars, things like pastas, rice, donuts, bagels, even hummus. Strip those foods out of your diet. Oh, hummus hit a nerve with you, didn't it, Hannah?
Well, I just know that you in the book tried to petition to put hummus back in, and I was with you on that. I was like,
yeah. I went to Phil Maffatone, who engineered this 2-week test for us, and said, I would like to lobby on behalf of hummus. And he was like, number 1 rule, no lobbying. If it's out, it's out. But the thing about it is 14 days is actually a very, very short amount of time to reset your metabolism. And by removing these foods for 14 days, then you can slowly reintroduce them. And because of your heightened sensitivity to them, you'll actually feel the reaction. So if you haven't had a bagel in 2 weeks and then you have a bite of a bagel, you'll either feel fine, you'll feel great, or you'll feel a little bit bloated and sluggish. But now you can draw a cause and effect between what's going in your mouth and how your body feels. And once you have that knowledge, it's tremendously powerful. You don't have to decide, I'm not going to eat a bagel because I'm not supposed to. You decide, I'm not going to eat the bagel because I don't feel like feeling like crap for the rest of the afternoon.
Right. And I mean, Eric, Chris has therefore used the word feel again lots of times. And it's not that you're saying, and it's important, I think, this, don't have this, don't have this, don't have this, because that takes all the joy out of it. And it's just not, that's not the game that I think you're trying to get people onto. It's just about, you know, try and move towards a certain way of doing things and feel what works for you, but this is likely to be the best way.
Absolutely. Again, it goes back to creating that awareness. If you know that donut's going to make you feel a certain way, maybe you can have a preset of knowledge going into making that decision. And then it becomes a decision rather than just something that you're pissed at yourself because you did after the fact, which then creates the more cycle. So you want to eat that donut because you know it's going to make you feel good. You eat it, it makes you feel bad. What do? You got to feel good again. You eat another donut. And so it's that vicious cycle that is the dedication of the 2-week test really strips everything down so you can then make really good conscious decisions for yourself that are done prior to what you put in your mouth.
And people can again see in the book the 2-week test what you can and you can't have during that. And as you say, then after that, it's about sort of revisiting things, seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. It sort of resets your relationship with certain foods. Can I move on? Because we've got some questions from the audience, great questions. So I will come to those in a moment. But I want to ask about the idea of either running on your own or running with friends and family. A lot of the book brings in fantastic examples of these great runs. You talked about park runs at the beginning. You have extraordinary kind of running festivals and things like that. But I was really intrigued about the fact that, you know, I know that running with someone else can be a huge joy. It's an extraordinary thing that happens when you run with other people. But it's not just a mental thing. You talk in the book about the actual physical benefits of running alongside someone. And I wonder if you could explain those. Perhaps, Chris, start with you, and then Eric, I'd love to hear, your thoughts on that too.
I would say this is the trickiest topic we address in Born to Run 2, apart from whether you should run with music in your ears.
Oh, yeah, I love that part.
Those are the two chapters where we had to think hard. And I think in both those chapters, we candidly said, we think we're right, but we're not 100% sure we're right. And I think running with other people, the difficulty is it seems like a inconvenience in the modern day. At this moment, if you want to go out and run with a friend, well, is that friend free? Or do they live near you? Are they running the same speed? Are they training for the same thing? There is such a disconnect between what we're all doing. And it's kind of sad in a way that the only way we can connect is electronically. People go through, fitness apparatus on their wrists in order to connect with other humans. So I acknowledge the modern inconvenience of trying to run with other people, yet we can't deny the evolutionary history where we all benefit from running in groups. I mean, the only reason why there are urban marathons is because we have this need to gather together. If you want to run 26.2 miles, well, the door is right there. Just go do it. Why is it that I have to spend, 400 pounds and then wait 6 months to go run the London Marathon? I can do it this weekend if I wanted to. I think we have this ancestral urge to gather in groups, which of course makes perfect sense because, in our historic past, you would never, ever venture into the wilderness by yourself because you'd never come back. So I think we have an instinctive urge to gather. The challenge is, how do we now translate that into our modern lives? And that's the thing I feel that, once again, be aware of it, embrace it, and find solutions. One of them that I think is kind of ingenious, my friend Guillermo Torres, one day a week, he will go to a rescue shelter and take out a rescue dog and take the rescue dog to a running club and then run with the running club. And everybody loves it. The dog loves it. Guillermo feels like a superhero. The running club loses their mind when he shows up with a Chihuahua that's going to run 5 miles. He has 100% adoption rate. Every single dog he's ever brought to a running club has gone home with a member of that running club. And so something like that at least reorients our thinking to at least one day out of 7, we're dedicating our run to a communal activity.
Eric, tell us sort of from the physical perspective as well, though, why actually running next to someone, as you describe in the book, the physics of it, why that is actually better for your running style and for your running.
Yeah, I think that specifically was talking about how Chris, when he went down to the Copper Canyon and met Caballo Blanco, who's kind of featured in Born to Run and in Born to Run 2, is that it became part of Chris learning how to relax and have light, easy run form by running in front of Caballo Blanco, where you can begin to feel you don't overstride. And it was just, maybe Chris can speak a little bit more to it, but it gives you kind of that sense of, hey, we're running together, where there's relaxation. And that, again, it goes back to that word of awareness. And I think that's really what Chris was trying to get to when we're running with people. We're in the moment, whether it's at a track session. It just strips away a lot of the external thinking that we do as humans, and for a cliche, it kind of brings us in the moment.
Mm.